were part of a television show which, with the Vietnam War, largely set the tone for a generation of a certain age. Did it feel like that when you were in the middle of it?
It didn't start. Yeah, it did in a way. It's like the war could have been. I just made this metaphor up right now, so it's not going to be all the time. If there's a beautiful woman that you really want to meet and she's in the dark, and she's winking at you, and she's showing you, she's wanting you to come, and you can't see her, she's still there, she's still doing it. And if we hadn't had that show, that opportunity, for Monday night at 9 o'clock, more TV sets were turned on at that time, had we not had the opportunity of the timing of CBS's host getting old and losing touch with the young audience, and if we weren't picked, that side of television would not have happened at that moment when the 60s was bubbling up, 67, 68. There wouldn't have been any of that. Carol Burnett would have had our spot. She was 2 weeks, they gave it to us 2 weeks before they gave her a TV show. They would have given her our spot. Why wouldn't they? She was fabulous. It would have been a great Carol Burnett show. It wouldn't have been what these two guys that were totally unqualified to do anything more than sing fake folk songs, argue with each other, carry a genuine relationship together. And what made it special is that Tommy's sensitivity was with that counterculture, with those young people. We lost our dad in World War II. He never came back from the Philippines. They were sacrificed. We always knew that 60,000 Americans were told to surrender in May of '42. And we were in the Philippines. We came over here. Mom struggled. It's like millions of women struggled. They became single mothers by widowhood. And she struggled with alcoholism and all those kinds of things. It bonded my brother and I together. And all those misadventures or all those things that you don't look for gave us a feeling of sensitivity and that opportunity. Had that opportunity not come our way, I have no idea what happened to us. But the bigger picture, those kids and those reports would not have been there. There's an article recently in the New York Times that said, what was what was television looking for? We gave them a young audience, a talked about show, people around the water coolers, the TV buzz. I never even heard that word until recently. They had all of that, but they were so uncomfortable. Perry Lafferty, executive at CBS, said, TV was never good at now, because they didn't know what now was. They liked to do what was comfortable. And we didn't know we were doing that, you know? And to have that opportunity and to have a brother so severely defective and tormented. See, comedians are very flawed individuals, and they share that with us. And all they have to do is have a sense of timing to go with it. You better be funny. And then Tommy, and I was a perfect foil for Tom. We improv'd all that stuff. So yeah, I think we became that after the fact. The show was an instant hit from the first show. It wasn't political. The second one wasn't political. There was nothing to be political about. The third show, our heroes, our icons, Jack Benny, George Burns came on, our third show, put on our red jackets and imitated the Smothers Brothers. That's like getting a hug from gods of, you know. So from then on, it was a good show. And when things happened, we got to be there. Just like unusual people in the birth of this nation or certain crucial times. What would have happened to Winston Churchill? We're not that class. If there's no World War II, he was not popular. He was flawed. And he was great. He was irreplaceable. I think my brother was irreplaceable. I love him so much, and he was so strong. And we lost our career. People said we're stupid, we were fools. Yeah, back off, back off. Now he says, I could have backed off with my mouth and talking with them and done the same thing. But we had no regrets. And to have people 50 years later even know who we are, we didn't ask for that, but it's such a joy. And by the way, Sarasota is the perfect town for me. It's like a Smothers Brothers baby boomer bus gets off at Simon's Coffee House where I go every day. And they come and it's such a joy to see how people recollect and want to share recollections. Is that a short answer to a long question or a long answer to a short question?
How did the conversation start with CBS? You
when?
said
At what
two
point?
unqualified people. So how did the show come about?
The show came about because they were last place in the ratings when there's more TV sets turned on at any other hour. That is disastrous. They tried 6 times to go against Bonanza, adult male Western. Abe Blasvogel, the president of William Morris, the biggest talent agency in the world, deals with all the networks, was telling you have aging stars. It's like a football team. You're still up there, but you've got aging players. You're not Atlanta, you're not Dallas, but look at Gary Moore was a great TV person. He has a last place show. He's the guy that brought Carol Burnett to us. You know, he was competent, and it was last place. And Abe Blasvogel said, you've got to get some young people there. Now what happened is CBS, our career started with Jack Parr in 1961. It was a brilliant, magical opportunity to do it. We were a surprise guest. We were a replacement. We're working with Pat Harrington Jr., Days of Our Lives. He was in a sitcom where he played the janitor, the super, great comic. He was a headliner at a little club called the Blue Angel, New York. And he liked us. He said, I'll try to get you on the Tonight Show. But Jack Parr doesn't like folk singers, so you probably won't get it. And Jack Parr had more viewers for that late night show than all the late night shows today combined, because it was the only thing in town. Anybody wanted that show. And why were they picked? They didn't pick us. He just mentioned it, a musical act fell through. Now, the musical acts on talk shows are there so you have time to go to the bathroom, come back, and not miss anything interesting, because the guests were the interesting thing. Right. So you think, oh man, we were so excited. And when we did the camera run through, they said, don't do your bit, just do a camera run through. We don't do good camera run-throughs. You know, okay, Tommy sings a song about fox. He quacks. There's these ducks and these chickens, and the stage manager, he says, well, if I do this, just stop singing and leave. So Jack heard about that, and he didn't want anybody to stink up his show that night. He was very egocentric, a wonderful, neurotic, great guy. He came out and didn't introduce us from the couch. He came out to our spot, like this roll of tape on the floor here. A spot is any spot, you know. And he wanted to make sure the audience knew that he didn't know what we did. We could be bad, could be good, it wasn't his fault. So he distanced himself by being clever, but it didn't work for him, it worked for us. He came out and said, there's Smothers Brothers is their name. It's really the name. I don't like folk singers. Those are folk singers. I don't like folk singers. Their dad was killed in World War II. That gets him going. He was a vet too. And he said a few things. He said, oh, by the way, boys, and he was like this. And we walked out. I had this bass. We had our big ears and short hair, and Tommy's in his guitar just looking. He said, by the way, boys, what's the difference between folk singers and hillbilly singers? Tommy said, folks, hillbillies sing higher. Just like, you dumb fool, don't you know that? The audience fell on the floor for some reason. Jack went that way, left. We did it. We were a hit. He brought us to the couch, then had us over again and again. And one day he said, see, Jack liked to step on your punchlines. He was sort of nasty that way. Yeah. And just when something's going, he said, just a second. I'll hold that thought. We'll be right back. Hold that thought. You know, like, well, he couldn't figure out where Tom was getting his laughs. So one day he said, I don't know what you two boys have, but I tell you one thing, nobody's going to steal it. And that was so sweet. And from that day on, our career went. 6 years later, CBS gave us 5 years later, a sitcom. And it was mediocre. It was like Dobie Gillis or Gilligan's Island. It was, nothing. They took away our instruments, our timing, our music, single camera show. And it was mediocre. And Tommy said, never again. So that was negative, right? A few months later, they offered us this variety show. So we said, we want creative control. We want to do this, this, and this, when nothing was happening in our mind politically. But they felt we'd be 13 weeks, mid-season replacement for Gary Moore, then we'd be gone. And it gave them time to do something meaningful. We were a surprise hit, and they gave us those rights. And then when things happened, we took them. Tommy said, I want young writers. Third year, we brought in Steve Martin, Rob Reiner. They were the third season when we got serious. They were 21-year-old kids and never had think Tommy was really a fan of the talent. We had rock and roll singers. We had icons. Like one show was Betty Davis, Mickey Rooney, and The Who. The drum exploded with Too Much Thing. You know, they were always talking about the Smothers Brothers. And I didn't see the show with the eyes I do now. I never, you know, when you're working, you're like, what are people saying about me? Why are they saying that? I don't know who I am. I don't know what my brand is. But now we look back and we see the attraction. It was an honest show. When it was simple, no tricks. And Tommy's, after a while, he started just really enjoying sticking the screws to him. He ran to the press. Elaine May from Nichols and May, they did a sketch on censorship, and they took the whole thing out. And so Tommy went to the press in New York Times, printed the whole skit. And it wasn't a very good skit, but the fact is they took it out. Harry Belafonte did a thing with the news footage of 1968 convention in Chicago, the riots, took to calypso music. Nothing was objectionable about it. 7.5 minutes long. They put in a Nixon commercial for president. So there was this things, you know, it was self-feeding after a while.
To those who are too young, and I'll include myself in that group, but are too young to have watched the Smothers Brothers, is it fair to make the parallel between what you were doing then in the 60s with perhaps what The Daily Show or Saturday Night Live do now in terms of interpreting the news for young people?
A bit. It's what when you're one of many scores of people doing it today, there's no danger, and there you have proven ground to improve upon. We started. Pat Paulson, Tommy ran him for president. Yeah, Colbert, thank you. You know, our show that opened the door to making comments. Yes, we opened the door. Yes, I could compare it, but it's like, comparing a 1941 Ford, which was a nice car, to a new car today. It had wheels and it went, but there's so much more you could do today. There was more responsibility back there. It's not all the same. There's no accountability, responsibility, alternative news. You can say anything you want. It's more difficult to get any truth. And we weren't editorializing. The government wanted to get out of Vietnam, so we said, send them home. That's a really quick fix. You know, the Gordian knot thing, you know, a true, honest person could take the sword out. Well, Pat Paulson was a street cleaner after a big political convention skit, and all the guys were spouting all their BS and all this stuff, and nobody could take the sword out, so they sweep it by, and the sword was in the way. He goes like this, and he sweeps it, sticks it back, and away he goes. We had David Fry, a great political mimic. He did Nixon great. We did those things there was civility, and there was honesty. We had writers who wanted, Lyndon Johnson, they wanted to pick on Lucy Bird and Lady Bird, they're silly names. Tommy said, no. They said, how about the skit on Muhammad Ali? No. Muhammad Ali, he's conscious there. We wanted accountability. And Lyndon Johnson was the president, Democratic president, when we had our show. And he was a great friend of Paley's, the president of CBS. They'd watch our show sometimes together. And the story is, he looked at Paley and he says, couldn't you tell those boys to go easy on the war? My daughters love the show, but can they go easy on the war? And there in the Lyndon Johnson, there's some letters from Tommy to President Johnson back to Tommy, saying the right and the necessity for political commentary and satire. Not saying we're dumb, we're stupid, you know, get a whatever. And there was light in the communication, and not ugliness. I think that it's like the steroids. The world's on steroids today compared to what it was then. And if we hadn't had done it at that time, someone else eventually would have done it. But it was the magic moment, that, you know, the perfect storm, the bubbling up of all that.